My name is Ava Olsen, and I will be presenting to you about the Alta Dam Conflict, which took place around Alta, Norway, along the Alta-Kautokeino River. The river snakes 106 miles through the reindeer herding grounds of the indigenous Sami people in Norway, from the Finnish border to the mouth in the Alta Fjord. During my research, I found the following thesis. Although the Alta Dam conflict in Norway caused a lot of controversy between the government and people of Norway, the Sami in particular, it can be looked at as an event with an overall positive outcome that gave the Sami people a lot of respect and an increased number of human rights. In this presentation, I will be addressing what exactly the Alta Dam conflict was, some background information on what happened during the 2-year controversy, how it affected the natural lands, the protests and activist groups that formed in support of the environment and for the indigenous Sami people, the large police force that attempted to stop the protests, and what outcomes came from the Alta Dam project. To give you a picture, Alta is in the very northern part of Norway. The Alta-Kautokeino River runs right through town. In the bottom left picture, you can see where Alta is in comparison to 2 major towns we've learned about, Karasjok and Kautokeino. Now that we know where this conflict all happened, you may be asking yourself, so what is the controversial part of the Alta Dam project, and why does it matter? In 1970, the Norwegian Water Resources and Electricity Board proposed a hydroelectric dam to be built on the river. Alarming forecasts of a nearing energy crisis motivated the Norwegian Parliament's support for the project. A combination of environmental recklessness, insensitivity to the rights of indigenous people, and the government's unreceptive attitude prompted an opposition to the Alta project that is unmatched in Europe's history of environmental conflicts. The proposed dam would have completely submerged the Sami village of Masi, leaving them displaced and caused serious impacts on their way of life. When a parliamentary commission visited the Sami area of Masi, the whole village met the politicians with banners reading, "We were here first," and "The reindeer do not change their routes." Their agricultural and fishing industries would be destroyed, along with traditional reindeer herding areas and the seasonal migration routes used by herders. This area was also known for its extraordinary natural beauty. Besides threatening the most valuable salmon fishing areas in the world, the project's proposed area was home to Norway's most notable birds of prey and to 6 out of the 12 most endangered species in Europe. Resistance to the dam began as soon as it was proposed in 1970, and quite a few activist groups were created. The People's Action Group, or PAG, was formed in 1978. The PAG was led by nationally known professors and scientists. Its messaging focused on the rights of nature and environmental conservation, and most of its members were ethnically Norwegian. Although the PAG included some Sami members, their message focused on saving the river rather than asserting the Sami's rights into their ancestral lands. On October 8, 1979, 3 months after the conflict began, 7 young Sami activists came together calling themselves the Sami Action Group, or SAG. The SAG focused more on the rights of Sami people to their historic land, as opposed to the PAG that focused more on the environmental factors. Mikkel Eide was the spokesman for the SAG. The SAG is known for their hunger strike during the controversy, which we will discuss soon. 2 more groups that were formed were the Norsk Reindriftssamer Landsforbund, or NRL, and the Norske Samers Riksforbund, or NSL. The NRL is a negotiating partner to the government in matters related to reindeer. This group was important to the controversy because the dam project would be affecting the migration of the reindeer. They have always been highly concerned by Sami rights and have worked hard to gain support for herding laws. The NSL is the largest Sami organization in Norway and is a more inclusive group representing all Sami. Their overall goal is to unite the Sami people as one. Another outside group began to show its support. The World Council of Indigenous People, or WCIP, was built upon the shared history of indigenous people around the world. Indigenous people have all experienced a similar history of intimidation, threat, deprivation, injustice, discrimination, and even genocide. They seek rights to self-determination and self-government, as colonialism has made them feel vulnerable to control by the majority cultures. For the Sami, this was an important group that they felt could help them receive rights as indigenous people. Very soon after, people began to show support of the IWGIA, or International Work Group for Indigenous Affairs. They appealed to the Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland for support of the Sami people. In the summer of 1979, the People's Action Group constructed a large stone barrier near the town of Alta to prevent construction of the 36-kilometer access road to the dam site. PAG manned the barrier, which they named Point Zero, with its members and allies round the clock to prevent bulldozers from beginning the road. 3 months after the conflict began, the Sami Action Group set up a traditional Sami lavu outside the Parliament building in Oslo, 3,000 kilometers from Alta. Their action had been planned in secret and came as a huge surprise to the rest of the anti-dam campaigners. The government still was not planning to suspend any of the project plans. The SAG vowed to begin a hunger strike if the government did not suspend the dam's authorization. All of these incredibly large protests brought a lot of media attention to Norway, and the authorities were beginning to make a plan to get involved. On October 10th, 2 days after the hunger strike, police informed the strikers that their occupation of the Parliament lawn was illegal, and stated that they would be allowed to continue their demonstration across the street for only one more day. The next day, police arrested the 7 hunger strikers and dismantled their lavu. Police increased their pressure the following day, October 12, 1979, by arresting 200 SAG supporters along with the strikers themselves. Following their release, the arrested again gathered in the front of the Parliament building, but found the lawn blocked by police force. Several hundred demonstrators sat down in the road in response, but the SAG, feeling that events might slip beyond their control, did not follow suit, and instead asked people to move out of the road. Meanwhile, 3,000 kilometers away, PAG demonstrators continued to hinder the bulldozers, but it was rumored that hundreds of police were preparing to forcibly remove them. These rumors turned out to be false. On Monday, October 15th, the government temporarily revoked authorization of the dam. The Prime Minister stated the decision was not made in response to the hunger strike, but out of simple concern for Sami interests. The SAG and PAG each suspended their protests, vowing to return if the dam were reauthorized. Before the Commission of Inquiry even released its report, and despite fierce and occasionally violent protests, the Norwegian government decided to go through with their plans and resume building the access road on January 14, 1981. They planned to send 600 policemen, 10% of the country's total police force, north to Alta. In the week leading up to the 14th, the PAG constructed an ice barrier at Point Zero and conducted training sessions for protesters to chain themselves to this barrier. PAG leaders announced their willingness to freeze to death if police were to remove their shelter while they were chained to the barrier, drawing shock from the national media. The day before the planned police action, 2 groups marched through Alta. The next day, the largest police contingent seen in Norway since World War II arrived at Point Zero to confront the blockade of 800 demonstrators. Approximately 150 Sami activists sat in front of the ice wall with their tents and were removed first by the police. Over the course of the day, the police physically removed the other demonstrators, including about 70 who had chained themselves to the ice wall. The police worked hard to not harm any of the activists physically. The eviction process lasted 16 hours in temperatures of negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit and with only 2 hours of natural daylight. By midnight, police had removed all members of the barricade, enabling construction of the road to resume. Major protests ended in February 1981. In autumn 1981, the Supreme Court denied one final challenge to the project by reaffirming that Sami did not have legal claim to their pastoral lands. The Alta Dam began producing electricity in 1987. Native plant species promptly disappeared from the dam area. Fish stocks plummeted. Reindeer herding areas and migration routes deteriorated and disappeared. The prediction of a dangerous energy deficit turned out to be false. A series of mild winters, unusually high precipitation levels, and the closure of energy-intensive industrial plants resulted in a surplus of energy in the early 1990s, bringing financial difficulties to energy producers. Although the SAG and PAG did not succeed in halting construction of the dam, the Alta controversy helped create a sense of identity and pride among Norway's Sami. The activists fought successfully to have Masi named a heritage area, and the project was scaled down in the removing of the reservoir. The controversy led to the establishment of a National Sami Rights Commission, which in turn led to constitutional reform and greater autonomy for Sami people. Since the project ended up a lot smaller than originally planned, they were effective in saving the salmon population, which is doing well at the moment. After the Alta uprising, large-scale hydropower became a highly controversial issue among Norwegian voters, and thus politically impossible. The Alta project became the last big river power plant built in Norway to date. The conflict illuminated the need to clarify the relationship between the state and Sami culture, and the legal status of the Sami as a people. In conclusion, the Alta Dam conflict was a sad and intense time for the people of Norway, specifically the Sami. In the end, what is important is that the Sami gained respect as a people, and finally, after hundreds of years, also gained the status of being an indigenous people in Norway. Hopefully there will never be another conflict of this extent now that the Sami have gained more equality.